In the previous tutorial we created a really versatile cinematic lighting setup which should be easy enough to tweak and get a variety of moods and styles. In this one we'll have a look at light groups, the amazing feature of Blender that allows relighting our render once it's finished. Using light groups we will browse through different looks in the blink of an eye, getting most value out of our lighting setup that we built for exactly that kind of versatility. By the end of this video, you should be able to relight your renders for testing different looks or for nailing that perfect light balance. A quick disclaimer. It could be quicker to adjust the lights right in the viewport and then simply re-render. It's not that light groups magically solve all problems. They do solve some, though. Okay, so let the light groups fun begin. Here is a quick refresher of how our lighting setup is structured. As we remember from the previous chapter, we were adding light layers in a step-by-step fashion, creating a new collection for each layer to keep it tidy. So now we have more than 10 such layers, including special effects and practical lights for that matter. You can go through each one of them in the outliner to remind yourself what is what. Basically, we are gonna be turning each collection into a light group from the menu that can be found in the View Layer Properties tab. That is what are we gonna be doing for the next whatever minutes. A proper naming scheme is a must-have, obviously. Otherwise, we won't be able to make sense of it all later on, trust me. So I'm extending the light groups window and pressing the plus button to start adding light groups. Each group should correspond to a certain collection, so the first one is gonna be HDRI environment. Then we have the first and the second key lights, that it should correspond obviously to these collections. And then I'll just spam some more light groups and go through a somewhat tedious naming process, renaming everything furiously. Don't forget about the practical lights subfolders too. Okay, one too many. Okay, should be fine now. The light groups preparation process includes assigning the light sources or any object with emissive materials to their groups. It takes some time, but it's the way it works. Let's start with the HDRI sphere. Gonna select it, then go down the Object Properties, Shading, Light Group, and pick the corresponding light group from the drop-down menu there. HDRI Environment one in this case, of course. Then to the first key light. We have 3 objects in the light_key_01 collection. I'll hold Shift and then select all these 3 objects, with one of them being active. Then I'm gonna pick the right group from the drop-down, but then only the active object highlighted in yellow will be assigned to this group. As far as I understand, we still have to right-click and copy this light group to select it, so all 3 now get their light group assigned. Let's do the same with the second key light. Shift-click, pick a proper one, right-click, copy to select it. The same process for the rim light. That's why it was important to name everything in a clean manner, otherwise we would be in quite a pickle right now. For practicals we have their own subfolders and light groups. L01 goes to Practical 01, L02 to its own group, so on and so forth. L03... It's a tedious process. Okay, to play it safe, I'll select all objects from the sensors collection, as I don't remember which ones actually emit any light, then Control-click on one of the objects to make it active. So I'm gonna add it all to the sensors group, just in case. Right-click, copy. This part of the process is definitely not my favorite, by far. So that was the initial setup anyway. Now we also need to store the denoising data though, which will come in handy later on. And that pretty much concludes a boring preparation process. After all the light groups set up, we can go ahead and render it all out now. The first thing to define is what resolution our render and all the passes are gonna be. 1920 by 1080 pixels to keep it nice and fast. Then I'll open the render properties and set the render samples for a more or less high quality render. Let's say around 1000 samples. It doesn't matter if denoising is turned on and off there. The light paths are okay as well. Now time to render. And that should be it for the preparation. It will be worth checking the light passes in the compositor right after rendering, because you never know. I'm gonna go to the Blender compositor. Here we go. Right away I will take use nodes and then backdrop. Then in order to preview our rendered light groups, we need to hold Ctrl Shift and click on render layers. That will set up the viewer for us. V and Alt V scales the preview up and down, while the Alt and middle mouse button can be used for panning around. It looks like all the light groups that we prepared so carefully got rendered indeed. If you want to preview it, just drag any layer into the viewer. Like that's the HDRI environment layer, and that's our first key light. Holding Ctrl Shift and clicking a bunch of times consecutively should switch the channels. So these are our light layers and special effects layers for that matter. Don't worry about the cycles noise just yet. We're looking at the raw passes that are gonna go through denoising later on, and it will be fine. Okay, I think everything is in place, it seems.